Good morning, everybody. I wasn't planning on going live, so I'm not going to really be on the camera too much, but I like haven't even brushed my hair or anything. But I am making over these really cheap, it's not wood, it's like the press board with the, I don't even know what that would be, the contact paper that they put on top of it to make it look like it's dark stained wood. But this is like an Ikea nightstand, and I have them in my bedroom, and so I've been trying to figure out what I want to do with them. And I don't like throwing things away if I don't have to. I mean, they're functioning, it's sturdy, it's not like it's gonna break apart, but I decided to add some details with the, I don't have them by me. I used the Prima molds to create these borders all the way around, and then the keyholes as well. And I used the molds in epoxy sculpt because epoxy sculpt holds its shape. It does not shrink or crack. So I like using that versus paper clay. It also is extremely durable. And so that's what I've done so far. And then I've kind of been playing around with different colors. I love like the vintage duck egg, sea glass, those different colors blended with drop cloth. And I have dried sage. And then I even have some Stormy seas that I'm using as well. And all of this is Dixie Belle paint. And so I'm just kind of playing around with different blending on these. Hey Brenda. Hey Betty. And then I of course have my water bottle, and I just have like a bunch of random brushes. I have a paint pixie brush, I have a couple brushes from Lowe's, and then a zebra brush, just because that's what I had by me. And so I'm just kind of using those with each color to blend. And like I said, I wasn't planning on going live, so I'm not going to be on the camera too much, but I figured I would let you guys kind of watch and see how easy it is to blend Dixie Belle paint. And this is not on being painted over real wood. This is like the pressed board Ikea garbage. So I wanted to try to go with something that's somewhat neutral, because this is going to be going next to my bed. And if you guys are new to my page and you didn't see my bed makeover, that was using Dixie Belle, Hurricane Gray, dried sage, drop cloth, midnight sky, and then it had a black wax over it. And so it's like just a blend of all these different colors. It looks very aged and layered and beautiful. So I wanted to use some of those colors, but still mix in some of the blues and teal colors. And the key is to keep it really damp to get a nice, smooth, blended look. And I'm still debating. I don't know if I want to give it a bunch of texture and make it look like it's really aged, or if I want to keep it super blended and smooth. So I'm just kind of playing around with it. Of course, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. So that is dried sage that I just put over drop cloth. Well, thank you for inviting and sharing, Betty. I appreciate that. Okay, now I'm taking some vintage duck egg. So this is what it looks like when you leave it sitting out open for a really long time. It gets like very thick, and it's really fun to use it when it's like that, actually, with a palette knife, because it holds its shape a little bit more. It doesn't even out quite as well as if it were watered down or like a fresh opened can of paint. And so I like to kind of, if I'm going for that really thick, layered, textured look, then I will leave my container open for a while. And then if you want to get it back to being super smooth, just add a little bit of water and just continue mixing it until you get it the right consistency. Hey Danielle, how are you doing today? So my plan is, after I get this all completed, like I want it blended, but I want it to be still somewhat neutral. So I'm gonna kind of probably use either dried sage or drop cloth and do like a whitewash look over it after it all dries. And then once I have it kind of toned back down a little bit where you can still see some of the vintage duck egg peeking through, then I am planning on using Dixie Belle Best Dang Wax in black and black waxing everything to make it just a little bit darker, and it'll help in all of these areas. I'm going to kind of take this Stormy Seas and shadow in the details. Hey Sue from Chicago. I heard you guys just got a lot of snow, which I'm jealous about because I love the snow. And I am in the Savannah, Georgia area, so we don't really get snow here. Hey Janet, you love watching this? And it doesn't have to be completely perfect. Like I said, I'm gonna still whitewash over it, which is gonna kind of create like a uneven, not quite like a streaky look, but it'll just look like it's kind of a clouded look. And then I'm gonna dark wax over that once that dries. You sure did. In Washington, joining a little late. Are you from Washington State or Washington, DC? Because I'm actually moving to Washington State in, what's today? Actually in like almost exactly 1 month. I am using Dixie Belle drop cloth, Dixie Belle dried sage, Dixie Belle vintage duck egg, and then Dixie Belle Stormy Seas, which is just a little bit darker than the duck egg. Almost has a grayish tint to it. And I'm just using random brushes that I had sitting around. So you don't have to use the brushes that I'm using, so I'm not gonna really go over what brushes I'm using. Is that an IOD mold? Yeah, it's the IOD or the Prima molds. I always get them mixed up. I'm not quite sure of the difference. But these are all those molds for the border around and then for the keyholes. And then I used epoxy sculpt to put into the molds. And I mentioned earlier, I love epoxy sculpt because it holds its shape and it does not crack. I've had problems with paper clay will shrink and it'll crack and kind of crumble. It's not very durable in my opinion. And this is, I mean, it's like cement when it dries. And it's self-adhesive, so I don't have to worry about gluing anything on. You just adhere it and then let it dry like that, and then it's on there for good. You're from Spokane, Washington. My little sister is over in, I'm gonna probably say it wrong, Shawnee, Washington. So my sister lives and works over there, but I am moving to about an hour north of Seattle, like the Marysville, Arlington, all of that area north, Snohomish County. So I'm adding more water to help blend this out. The epoxy sculpt, I will, I don't have my link on here, but if you follow my page, once I'm finished with this video, I will post my link for it. And there's like different colors you can choose from, but I like the white just because it's not even like necessarily a white, it's more of like a grayed out white kind of color, and I like that best because the natural color is has a little bit of like a greenish tone to it, and so if you distress back over it, sometimes you see that greenish color come through, whereas if it's white or that grayish white, it's not so noticeable. But they have all kinds of different colors. They have like black, they have I think like red and all kinds of stuff. Uh-oh, my video stopped. Hopefully it didn't stop. Did it stop for anybody else? So now I'm just using some Stormy Seas, and I just like to follow the border around. It just helps darken it just a tiny bit. Okay, it's good. Good to know. And thank you guys for sharing. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to grow my page. I've been doing Facebook Live videos for a little bit now, but lately, because I've been trying to get the house ready to go on the market, and you have to keep it constantly clean for showings, it's been really difficult to like paint anything. And so I've been mainly doing canvas paintings, but I do furniture, I do canvas, I make signs, and like home decor, but I like to do a lot of like DIY videos. A lot of things are like on a budget because I grew up with not a whole lot, and so I try every day to make things that are beautiful on a budget and show other people that they can make things like this as well on a budget. And so I've done like I just did a shiplap wall in my house this past year, and that cost me $50 to do, and it looks amazing. But in this new house that I'm moving into, I plan on doing some things, like some decorative things. So there's a she shed in the house, or on the property, and I'm going to probably do another shiplap wall in the she shed. So that's gonna be like my studio, and where I paint the furniture, where I stage the furniture. And so I want it to look really clean and beautiful. So once I figure out how big exactly the she shed is and make sure everything's gonna work out good for using it as my studio, then I will document the whole process on my page for you guys, so you guys can learn how to do the shiplap wall. I did a tutorial, like a PDF tutorial on it, but it's sometimes people are more visual learners. I know for me, I'm a visual learner, and so I will also document it with videos. So this is just a cheap Ikea end table, or maybe it was from Walmart, I don't know. We bought a couch from somebody a few years ago, and they gave us their end tables for free. And so we didn't have, or nightstands, I guess. We didn't have nightstands at the time, so we took it. And then, like I said, I like to do everything on a budget, and they're sturdy. There's not really anything wrong with them other than they're just not very pretty to look at. And so I did the details on the front. I'm painting it. I may put a wood plank top on it. I haven't decided yet. And then I'm also going to make some legs for the bottom. And I haven't decided exactly if I want to just buy already made furniture legs from Lowe's, or if I want to try to make something myself. But they definitely need to be raised up because our bed is like 2 feet higher than these end tables or nightstands. Hey Jamie, thank you for sharing, Melissa. You would love to see my wall. I can actually, I'm gonna take you guys on a little adventure real fast. Hang on. I'll show you guys my wall so you can have a better idea of what to expect in the future. And I apologize because I really don't have like any makeup on. And I have a big old pimple that decided to break out on my face. So bear with me here. Okay. So I'm gonna put this up on my counter here. So that is my shiplap wall behind. So it goes all the way up. I have trim. Let me turn on the lights. Maybe that didn't help much. But I have trim that I made, or that I put up on the very top. I painted that hutch in Dixie Belle fluff with some Hurricane Gray blended around, and same with that buffet that I'm now using as my coffee bar. My table here is painted in fluff, and so I definitely love Dixie Belle paint as my paint of choice. But I will be teaching you guys how to do that wall on Facebook Lives. You love everything about the room. I do too. It's one of my favorite rooms in our house. I really didn't take over too many of the walls in the rest of our house. That was kind of the main area that I focused on. And I love how it turned out. And if we were staying here longer, I would have done shiplap probably on our bedroom wall in our master bedroom, like back, or blurry, back against like where my headboard sits against. So I thought that would look really pretty. But now we're moving, and all of my hard work is going on to the next couple that moves in. You're doing the white plaid in your kitchen too? I love it. It's just neutral, it's classic. It goes with any decor that you put with it. Like when I put up my like fall decorations, it goes with my fall decorations. When I put up my winter decorations, it goes with my winter decorations. I have like all different chargers for my kitchen table for every holiday or season, and it goes with everything. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do for the sides yet. I might just, an idea that I had, because I want this to look more washed out, and then I want to do a lot of like the shading with the black wax and then like bring it back down so it's a little bit darker. I have Dixie Belle's patina line, and I've seen so many pictures of like beautiful furniture. I know Brush with Brandy, she just did one recently where it had like patina coming down and it looked so pretty. And so I was thinking of maybe putting some patina around the little keyhole and making it look like it's metal, and then having it like drip down so it looks like it's kind of like rusting. Not sure. That was one idea that I had. But this is just going in my bedroom, so it doesn't have to be loved by all, just as long as I like it. What is the color of your white pieces? So I use Dixie Belle Fluff, and then for the shadowing around all the details, I used Hurricane Gray. Why the black under the lighter colors? Oh, so this is what it looked like. I just lightly sanded it or scuffed it up with 150 grit sandpaper, just because this is not real wood. I wanted it was too smooth. I wanted it to give, or I wanted to give the paint something to stick to or adhere to a little bit better, instead of, I mean, I could have tried it without scuffing it up, but I've painted long enough now that I usually have a good idea of what will need just a light sanding to just make it a little bit more durable. But this is not a real wood nightstand. You're welcome, Kelly. I think this is actually like the most people that I've had on one of my Facebook Lives before. So you guys are sharing, and that is awesome. I appreciate it so much because I have just under 1,400 followers, and my goal is definitely a lot higher than that. And unfortunately, I haven't been as active on my page lately since I am in the process of moving. But as soon as, I'm going to say it's probably realistically going to be like the first week of March is when I will get back into the swing of doing more regular Facebook Lives and taking you guys through the process of making over the she shed and all of that. But it's going to depend on when we can get internet in our new house. I'm not sure what the service situation is over there, if I'm going to have good enough service that I don't need to wait for the internet to do a Facebook Live. Yes, this is vintage duck egg that I'm using. Yeah. So, I think that's pretty dry already. I love Dixie Belle paint because you can paint one coat or one side, move on to the next side, and then the next side, and by the time you come back, it's already dry and ready for a second coat. So, I think what I'm going to do is try to do this washed out look effect that I want to get to tone down the vintage duck egg. Let me see, I'm trying to position this to where I can still work on it, but it's facing the light a little better. What did I highlight with? So I used dried sage, and then I used drop cloth. So I love these colors with it because it's not like that, it's not like super bright white that I'm highlighting with. It's more of like the tan and cream colored tones that are going to come through. So I think I'm going to try to whitewash it with drop cloth, I think is my plan. Have you ever used different chalk lines together? Over to Dixie Belle, but I have some. I've used Dixie Belle with Debbie's Design Diary. I've used Dixie Belle with mud paint. I've used Dixie Belle with, I think it was Rethunk Junk. So I've used a lot of different paints. They all go on for the most part together nicely, but they dry differently, and some paints aren't self-leveling like Dixie Belle's paint is more like a self-leveling paint. So you have to make sure that you work with it while it's wet and you get it exactly how you want it while it's wet, and then leave it. Because if you continue to try to work with it as it's drying, because the dry times are different for different paint lines, you're going to get this weird where it's wanting to pull back the different brands, and then it's going to just glob up and it doesn't look great. Okay, so I just took a little bit of paint, and this is like a ginormous 3-inch brush. but I like using this when I whitewash or when I seal because it has a big surface area. But I got a little bit of paint in there and then a lot of water. And then I'm going to even wipe it back a little bit because I don't want that much paint. I just want it to lightly kind of go over this. So that is kind of toned down now, and it's going to appear a little bit lighter until it starts to dry. But it tones out some of the vintage duck egg because I don't want it to be too overpowering. This is going to be the first piece that has like color to it that I'm putting in my bedroom. The rest is like that weathered antique gray look. And then it was a different brand. I think it was mud paint. And I used, I think it was Manor White. And their off-white paint is more of a yellow tone. And so I want to go back through and repaint it in drop cloth. Because drop cloth is a lot more neutral. It has more of like a creamy beige undertone instead of like a yellowed undertone. All right, what does it need now? Let me push it back a little bit so I can get a better view of it. I think I want to add something that's a little bit darker to it now. I don't know. Now I'm confused on what I want to add. I think I might... I don't know. Do you guys have any ideas of what to add to it? Thinking I could add a little bit more dried sage to it. I think that's what I'm going to do. Use a little bit more dried sage, and I'm going to kind of do the same washed effect, but I'm going to have it out further. So it'll still look darker as it gets closer to the edges. You notice that instead of reloading your brush, you wet it down. Yes, so I like to Again, I feel like this goes back to like, I don't like to spend a whole lot of money on things. So I like to use as much paint as I can, get it out of the brush, because if you're painting a lot, your brushes are going to clog up more and more and more with the paint. So when you use water, not only does it help you to get this really smooth finish, it helps with blending, but it also helps to keep your bristles not loaded up with paint all the way to the base of the brush. And so it just kind of pulls it back out and then back out onto your piece. So I feel like that helped a little bit. I think I'm going to let that dry, and then to even darken it up just a little bit more, I am going to do the same thing, but just around the edges with Stormy Seas. And I love the look of it before. You could have definitely just gone with that look all over without doing like a wash tone over it, but I just didn't want it to be that intense in color. And I still am going to make it look more grungy at the end, but I'm just trying to tone down the color to where it's peeking through the paint and not so much it being the overall color. And with Dixie Belle, I like to usually do a minimum of 2 coats. I feel like for the colors, 2 coats is perfect. For whites, you have to go with some more coats just to help with the coverage. But what I like to do if I plan on doing a washed look or I want a color to show through is I will paint the base coat that color, and then whatever I add on top of that, that's going to be the primary color, but then I can distress away, or I can not fully cover it, like do more of like that wash look over it, and that way I can still have those bits of color showing through. It's just not so intense. That's not like the primary color of the whole thing, but I'm still using it as my first base coat to get 1 coat on and then 1 coat over it. All right, so now I still have to decide on what to do for the sides. So I think what I might do is probably just kind of the same thing where I do a whitewash in the middle and then do this dried sage wash on the edges. So it'll look the same all over. Can't tell, is that a green? Not the drawers. So this is vintage duck egg. Yes, Debbie, vintage duck egg. can see there's an area right in here where I didn't sand very well. And so it's wanting to pull back the color right there a little bit. But that's fine because for this look I'm going with, once I put the black wax over, it's going to look more grungy and more worn. I don't want it to be completely perfect. But if you're having this issue, I did a very, very thin first coat. So if you do a very thin first coat and then you do just a little bit thicker second coat, by the third coat it shouldn't be pulling back like that. And if it is, then you need to, or then you have problems with underneath, either your piece has been waxed and you need it to be sanded, or there's some sort of an oil on your furniture. But usually if it's just, it isn't wanting to, or it's wanting to pull back the first coat when you try to apply a second coat, just do 2 really thin coats and you shouldn't have that issue. So now I'm taking a little bit of the dried sage. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave this. I'm gonna need to, I may need to just add some more paint at the bottom. Also, if you continue to brush away and you're getting it too wet, that may be pulling back the paint as well. Because I haven't had that issue on the rest, I think that's probably what it is. It's just too wet and I'm trying to pull too much wet paint or water over that very light first layer. So I'm going to move back to the front. Let's see here. So it's pretty dry. There's still, it's kind of dry more in the middle than it is on the edges. So I am going to, hang on one second guys, sorry. To grab my blow dryer. Just bear with me real fast. I just want to dry this enough to where I can show you how I'm going to add in the Stormy Seas, and then I'll probably end it there for today. Pull this around. Just my little French round brush and a little bit of Stormy Seas, and I will just pull it around the corners. my other brush that I had the drop cloth, or not drop cloth, the dried sage in. And I'm gonna just try to get a majority of the paint out. And you can use like t-shirt rags and stuff. Usually I have those on hand, but I'm all out. And then I'm gonna use this to just lightly blend that line. All right, so I think I have that how I want it. So it'll look like that to where it's very washed out in the middle, and then it still has that hint of the vintage duck egg, but with a wash of Stormy Seas over it to make it a little bit darker. And then once everything's dry, once I finish the sides and everything in the top, I'm going to put some black wax in there. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, it's Weathered Hearts over on Instagram as well. And I like to do stories instead of doing like hopping on to show a live video every time I add a detail or do something to a piece. So I will go on Instagram and upload to the stories when I start waxing or when I start finishing the sides and the tops. So make sure you're following me over there. You're waiting for Stormy Seas to come in the mail. I love it. It is definitely, I feel like I have a lot of favorite colors, but this color line that I'm using, the drop cloth, the dried sage, the Stormy Seas, and then the vintage duck egg, those are some of my favorites. I feel like it's a very like a classic coastal farmhouse kind of color scheme, I guess. I don't know. All right. I won't be going live for the black wax. I'll be doing that on an Instagram story. So if you have Instagram, follow me over there. I will post pictures once I get off here so you can see close-ups of exactly what this looks like, because I know sometimes it's a little bit harder to see it on a video. And then also, once I'm finished with it and I add the legs and everything, because I still have to figure out what I'm going to do for the legs, then I will post a finished picture. But thank you guys for joining in. Thank you guys for sharing. Make sure you're following my page. I will go on my page and I'm going to post the link for the epoxy sculpt. So if you are interested in that, watch my page and that'll be up in just a minute. All right, thank you guys.